Triambakam yajamahe Sugandhim pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva bandhanam Mrityurmukshyamamritat
Hi, this is Amelía and Joe.
Hey everyone, it's Satya, and you're listening to Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda. Hi everyone, it's Satya here, and today I'm here with Joe, our producer, and the wonderful, beautiful Amelía, and we're going to talk some shop with you guys today because we've been publishing diligently now for 16 weeks, and we're at this point where we're sort of reassessing everything and what's been shared, and I know that some stuff has been coming up. We actually have 3 episodes that are amazing that we wanted to put out, but we are going to not put those out. And so I wanted to just, start there today. And Amelía, where are you at with what you've shared so far on this podcast? And I know you and Joe have experienced some things, so take it away.
Yeah, it's, the whole idea of this podcast was a little bit scary. It's something I've thought of for many years, and I actually recorded 9 episodes with a different co-producer. And I don't know if I mentioned this in our earlier podcast, but it ended up triggering her so much in what was coming up in the conversation, around sex, that we never published any of those 9 episodes. And then you were brave enough to step forward and be like, I'm doing this with you, right? And so and Joe's like, oh yeah, I'm in. And so the 3 of us jumped in. And so although I had been sitting with, I need to share my stories about love and relationship with the world. I need to expose this. It has been a terrifying experience to share so vulnerably and so much. I mean, I spent so much of my life, most of my life up until a couple years, well, pretty much till last year, never sharing about my sex life. It was really private. Nobody could really figure it out except those who were in it with me. And I think even they couldn't totally figure me out. And so I found in my own need to heal, and also with what I was noticing with my students and all of the people I've worked with, is that it's something that we're all grappling with. And I felt that some of my stories could really help the collective heal. That was my interest in sharing it, in exposing my own healing process, because some of my stories are a little bit more extreme. And so it's like, well, if I can heal this, then it's going to unlock a lot of doors for others who are listening. So that was the intention. And I think now that we've done so many episodes, and there were a few there, like the Date Rape Diaries, that was totally terrifying for me. And a few others that I've shared some of my background story and, some of the traumas and things that I've experienced sexually. It's been interesting integration. I've changed a lot of my life. I moved abroad and needed to travel and not be where people could find me. I was afraid for my life a little bit, actually a lot. And I knew that my story will piss people off, and it has. And I've gotten those messages. And I've also learned a lot. I'm learning my own boundaries, and that's what came up with this recent reason, what brought us here today to address, because we're not going to be publishing the last few episodes. I don't know, Joe, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I can, because it's pretty much more my fault. And I'll tell you guys why, because it's a good thing too. The Amelía and Satya both have a way of getting me to open up in ways that I've never opened up before. And I kind of did that. And then later on was like, okay, what did I just say? And I have no regrets talking to them about it at all. But then you got to kind of weigh like the cause and effect of things. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't certain things like some of the stuff you've talked about, Amelia, is important. Even though it was very revealing, I think that morally it was important and spiritually it was important versus kind of maybe sometimes we get too deep about things and maybe just don't realize how it affects other people because really we're just trying to figure this stuff out, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's a big thing for me. And I know what I've been asking myself, especially these last few weeks before I even knew how it was affecting you, Joe, was like, I was just noticing that I've now opened up, like I've unleashed this huge wall where I used to not share and my sex life was so private. And now I'm like oversharing, the pendulum's kind of swung to the other level. And, I'm meeting new people and they know I have this podcast and I'm like, oh my God, I hope they don't listen to that. Like they're going to know too much about me and they're not my good friend. And, these conversations are like, I'm talking to two of my really good friends. And I sometimes forget that, there's maybe hundreds of thousands of people also listening to this. And also realizing that not everybody is on the same page or the same consciousness of like when I share things, how I came to the conclusions I've come to or why I feel it's okay to share. And really learning where's the boundary between what's my story and what's someone else's personal story, because obviously all my stories happened in relationship to someone else. And me sharing about it, I'm exposing that other person in some way, like their personal story. And it's not mine to share, but my part is. And so I've been trying to find that boundary. And I think I've made some mistakes. And I'm not regretting it totally, but I'm learning from it. I'm learning like, okay, I need to be aware that other people who I'm involved with aren't on the same page as I am, and it's my responsibility to hold that relationship sacred and their part of their story sacred. And yet how do I share my story without, it's a line that I haven't figured out, and I am human and trying and making mistakes as I go. So I know that, I've received some emails of people like, this isn't, why are you sharing this much? And I hear you. I hear that, and I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out. So I think that's what this conversation is about for us today.
There's so much that needs to be talked about in this world, and we're all so in one way or another, in multiple ways, so fragmented, and so much of our experiences has to be in secret. And the world often just isn't ready yet. Maybe in a couple of 100 years, we could just, no big deal. But, and some of the stuff that Joe spoke about, I think would be incredibly healing for a lot of people. A lot of people would probably just, just breathe a sigh of, be able to take a deeper breath and relax a little, and maybe even accept themselves on a deeper level. But there's always going to be the small handful of people that could have a negative reaction, or their lives could be affected. And this is what is, such a challenge in doing something like this, because there's so much that needs to be said, and we want to just unleash it all, which we are doing but then, yeah, there's always this, sometimes
there's
we
a
have to pull back.
responsibility. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut
some
you
of these
off.
people
Satya.
need to be like the date rape diaries and stuff. Those things I know was like really hard for you to talk about.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm glad you did, and I know other people are too, because the whole reason why I wanted to be a part of this show is because I feel like that love and sex and this whole thing like is one of the biggest and greatest experiences we have in our life. And I think there is something in this world and the other world that is robbing us of something really good that's keeping us all from experiencing it. And this is why I'm interested in it. And when I hear about some of the bad things that people do, and the best way to tell those things is to really tell your own experience. There's no better way to convey a message to somebody than telling them your story. It becomes very hard at that point because there are characters in the story. And then now you got to think about the cause and effect and all this other stuff. And so that's the resistance that not just we're up against, I think the rest of the world is up against. So in one way, I think, people are happy that you and maybe I or anybody's willing to talk about these things. But then again, it does affect our lives possibly and other people's lives around us,
Yeah. And that's what's kept me quiet all my life. I was raised in a cult with a lot of secrets and in a family with a lot of secrets. And then I was in relationship after relationship that had a lot of secrets. And part of my spiritual awakening and opening to my gifts, I really want to experience living a transparent life. Like, I don't have the need to have a secret. And yet, when I expose my shadow and all the things that reside there, it's dangerous. And I've been threatened very clearly, like, you cannot speak about this. And I was silent for so much of my life. I never spoke. I didn't dare speak about it. And about 3 years ago, like right after my house fire, when I moved to Shasta, I started to, I needed to start speaking to someone about it. So I started speaking to a therapist about it. And then I found out more and more women had this story. I shared it with my therapist, found out she had the same story. I shared it with the girls that I was hanging out with after I saw the therapist, and they all had the same story. And a lot of it was, childhood sexual abuse and kind of ritual abuse and really dark stuff that I never wanted to share because I didn't want to burden anyone with the dark images and the monsters and the whole hidden agenda that I'm trying to expose. I didn't want to burden them because it's so sick and so demented that it needs to stay in the shadow because people are shocked from how ugly it is, and then the people who I would be exposing happen to be very powerful people that scared me into silence. And I think that in finding my voice, it was actually, I remember it was when Trump got elected. I felt somebody tap me on the shoulder, like on an energetic level. I got tagged into the fold and they were like, speak now, your voice is open. And all of a sudden I was able to start sharing. And I think I did my sex rant or something on YouTube. Was the first time I was like, I'm pissed, and I was like coming out. It sounds like I'm a angry feminist. And I still think it was, I was so angry when I did that recording that people misunderstood me then, and that triggered something. But I felt like, oh my God, it's free. That huge rock that had been on me my whole life was shifting. And in my sharing, I was healing myself. But it's also been very shaky and new and uncomfortable. And I don't know exactly where the boundaries are. I'm figuring it out as I go. And I think that's what we're figuring out together in our podcast production.
There's been a lot of voice activation and in our friendship, and it's interesting because the Me Too movement and all of that has just in the last few years, and with Trump and it just kind of all is happening in sync. And the Me Too movement is just, I think scraped the surface. There's so much more underneath that. So there's so much more still.
Yeah, I think finally women, somehow Trump being the way he is, got us so upset and speaking out about things that just, I guess everybody thought, okay, Western women, they're so liberated. They have equal rights. They have all these things. They don't realize that we still are living in a lot of fear, and we are being subjugated all the time and like objectified, and that these white supremacists still do run the world, even though we think we're in this, liberal sort of, I don't know, egalitarian democratic world. We're not.
And once you go political on people too, they shut off. So every person that actually voted for Trump or likes the guy or whatever, once you say stuff like that, it's funny to me how everything in their mind and soul shuts off to you. That's a problem, right? So every human being on the face of this earth has good and evil, but we think these politicians are either the devil or their saviors, and that's a problem. Because we can't talk about them openly without offending mass quantities of people. And the underlying biggest thing, the biggest evil in the world, I feel, is what you guys are talking about. The one thing the reason why we're having this discussion is because we can't openly talk about it because of what we're so afraid that's going to happen. But it is probably one of the darkest things. That's why the show is called like The Hidden Agenda, because there's something dark that's been keeping us down when it comes to love and sex and relationships and things for a long, long time.
Yeah, and it's the cornerstone of all of our connections. Like when I talk about Trump, I'm not even speaking politically. I'm just speaking as a man. Like when I see him or hear him speak, I don't care about his political views. I can't even hear the political views. All I see is a man who's abused a lot of women. And when I look at him, I just want to vomit. And I don't understand how any woman can vote for him. Like you just see his wife and I see her trauma in her face. I see that she's completely being abused by him. And I just can't look at it. I can't even get beyond that to hear what he's saying. I just can't get beyond it. And so it has nothing to do with politics for me. Like he might be good at what he's doing. I can't even hear it. All I see is a man who has abused, and it brings up this rage towards the white man in me that it's not healed. And I'm healing it. The more I've been sharing here, I see a shift in me. And I had this discussion with someone I met recently who was a white man talking to me. And I realized, like, I'm terrified of this guy. I'm terrified of his consciousness. I'm terrified of how he's talking to me because he's this like really strong, masculine white man. Wow. And it has nothing to do with their political beliefs. It's a presence that has, and I told him, I'm like, all my abusers are the way that I was trained as a child fits this description. So it's hard for me to get beyond that. I just go into my trauma response. I can't hear anything. Even if they're the nicest guy, I'm in a trauma reaction to their presence.
And that's so brave of you to say even right now, because there's going to be somebody who hears this and says, oh,
Yeah,
you
she's
hate
racist.
white men. Yeah, are you racist, or that whole thing?
Oh,
but
God, I know.
but that's that's not what you're saying. You have had an experience, and this was the person. These people did these things, and so yeah, you're going to have that natural
Yeah,
reaction.
it'd be like someone who got trampled by elephants
Right.
and then they got disabled, and then every time they see an elephant, they start going into fear response. I mean,
right. Or like
what I have. I have
or
a
like
fear
if you get
response.
bit by a dog when you're a little kid, you have a lifelong fear of dogs. It doesn't mean that dogs aren't absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, we have
that's
to clear
all
the
it is.
trauma. And that's
Well,
what this whole thing is for. For me, I'm trying to clear my trauma so that I can have a healthy, loving relationship instead of the relationships that I have had, which have been wonderful. And I've had a lot of love in my life, but I haven't experienced what I really want to experience. And so I'm exposing all this and sharing because I'm like, I see a collective wound happening. I see it in everyone. I know I'm not alone in it. Maybe my story is more extreme. If I can transmute it, I know it will transmute for people that are dealing with similar, but maybe not as extreme situations.
Well, yeah. And we live in as lovely as our country is, this country is heavily controlled as far as people speaking their truth. That's just how it is. Like we're very split and divided, and we're taught to think in a black or white way, or anyone who's any different from us, pigeonholing them and thinking that they're, demonizing them, that all this separateness, and that's all the Luciferian agenda, just all the separation, right? So any thought we have that has anything to do with separation it's not oneness. And I mean, that might sound cheesy, but that's really the simplicity of what's going on. I mean, we have to be able to talk about these things and not, my Danish friend yesterday was telling me, it's really strange because I came to this country and people would say, hi, how are you? And I would say, oh, well, I lost my job this morning. I'm looking for a new place. I just got bit by she's told the truth. And she said people looked at her like she was completely crazy. And she said, in her country, they don't do that. They don't say, hi, how are you? Unless, they mean it.
Unless they want to know.
There is no conversation like that. There's no shallowness like that per se. It's like, you don't call somebody and say, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? How's it? Okay. Well, I was actually thinking, do you have any apples? Because I could really use an apple. No, they'll just, get you on the phone and say, hey, I need some apples. They get right to the chase, and nobody's going to think, oh, that was so rude of you. Like you're just so demanding, or you're so to the point, or you're so, so we have all kinds of ways just embedded in our culture that are just kind of sweeping things over the, under the rug, or keeping us asleep, or not allowing us to say the truth. And, psychology was actually, really popular here first. Like I remember when I was getting my degree and I was traveling through Europe, everybody thought there was something wrong with me, that I was getting a master's degree in psychology. They looked at me just like I had four heads, and they would say, why would anyone go to a psychologist? And why would you want to study that? Don't you guys talk? Don't you guys talk to each other? Don't you have connections
right, like
with
the psychology came from, from a lack of community and connection.
It is. That's what it is. And there's a lot of countries where, people get together every single day, and they're not driven by, work and keeping up with the Joneses and, all of this. They're every day there's 10 of them sitting at a table, sipping some tea, talking about real stuff. I mean, have you ever seen a foreign film? Come on. Foreign films are not like, and everything lived happily ever after, and there were no problems. no, that's not how foreign film is, because in other countries, they're much more connected with reality. Like, it's almost like we're just asleep here in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, just to come back, and I know we have to wrap up shortly, but to come back around to what we're grappling with today with the podcast in our sharing is like the three of us have come together to counsel each other, to be each other's therapists in a way, to heal these wounds inside ourselves where we've had to hold them. Like Joe was saying, he was sharing with you and I, Satya, about things he's never talked to anyone about and how freeing it was for him. But then he realized, okay, I can't put that out on the air for the public. And I think, we used to have our families used to be that safe place, or, in tribal or in more cultured, healthy communities, we would have wise elders, we would have close friends, and we would have that circle of trust and support. And in the West, I think that it's been so abused. We all live in a state of fear of gossip, and we've been pushed into our separate areas, and we have to text each other or leave voicemails, and before we ever get a face-to-face or a proper hug or a proper feeling of safety to share and to come back to our health. And so, we're doing it in this sort of public way and finding our limits in it. Like where's the line, right? So
now I think what would help too is if we got feedback, like when I say like exactly, you, the listener, like, is it helping that we're revealing so much to you about our lives? Are you afraid to email the show and ask a question? You don't have to use your real name. Any kind of feedback to either one of the girls would help us decide how to assess things from here on out. So that's real important.
Yes. Yeah,
because what you were saying, Joe, about our personal experience. I mean, the reason I share my personal experiences so much is because that is how I've learned, and I feel that that's what gives credence to my thoughts and to like how I formed my belief structures and whatnot, or what drives the decisions I make, especially in my relationships. And yet I think a lot of people can be uncomfortable about it. So those who are listening, please let us know. Are the personal stories good? Are you liking them? Are you feeling that we share too much? Are you seeing a boundary that you can help us find? I mean, for me, I'm really defining some new boundaries for myself. And so I would love feedback to know if you think that things have been overshared, or you want more of that or less of that, so we can kind of move forward more effortlessly and confidently without tripping on ourselves here as we're kind of going into some scary territory. So let us know what you think. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Joe, for being brave and standing for what's true for you. And thank you so much, Satya, for showing up and doing this with me every week. We're week 16. Thank you guys for listening. If you want to share your feedback with us, head over to our website, lovesexagenda.com, and leave us a message. And you can find us also on social media, Love Sex Agenda. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with us. If you'd like to contact us and stay in touch with us, you can find us at lovesexagenda.com. That's lovesexagenda.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda.